Ophelia Prescott sat alone in her sunlit apartment in Boston, staring at the framed photograph of her parents. At 35, she had achieved everything society deemed successful: a thriving career as a neuroscientist, financial stability, and respect among her peers. Yet an inexplicable emptiness haunted her, a feeling that something fundamental was missing from her understanding of life. Her relationship with her parents had always been strained. Her father, Robert, a stern military man, had never understood her sensitive nature and interest in metaphysical subjects. Her mother, Eleanor, though loving, had remained distant, as if carrying a burden she couldn't share. Ophelia had often wondered why she felt like a stranger in her own family. The dreams began the night after her visit to the Edgar Cayce Center in Virginia Beach. She had gone there on a whim, drawn by a newspaper article about the sleeping prophet and his readings on reincarnation and soul journeys. That night, Ophelia found herself floating in a realm of shimmering blue light. Unlike ordinary dreams, everything felt hyper-real. The soft vibration around her, the sense of timelessness, the profound peace that permeated her being. "You're remembering now," said a gentle voice beside her. Ophelia turned to see an elderly woman with kind eyes and luminous white hair. Something about her felt deeply familiar, though Ophelia was certain they had never met. "Remembering what?" Ophelia asked. "The choice you made. All souls choose their life circumstances before birth, their parents, their challenges, their soul. Companions. These choices aren't random but carefully selected for what each soul needs to learn." The blue light surrounding them began to shift, forming images like a cosmic movie screen. Ophelia gasped as she saw herself, yet not herself, as a point of consciousness in a vast gathering of light beings. "This was you, before your current incarnation," the woman explained. "You're witnessing the planning session for your present life." Ophelia watched, transfixed, as her pre-birth self moved among other souls, engaging in what seemed like deep telepathic conversation. The emotions were palpable: love, purpose, determination, and a profound understanding of the journey ahead. "But why would I choose parents who don't understand me?" Ophelia asked, watching as her soul self approached two familiar lights that somehow she recognized as Robert and Eleanor. "Look more closely," the woman urged. The scene expanded, and Ophelia could suddenly perceive threads of light connecting her to both parents, ancient bonds spanning many lifetimes. With this expanded vision came knowledge. Robert had been a fellow soldier in ancient Rome, where he had saved her life at the cost of his own. Eleanor had been her daughter during the Civil War, when Ophelia, then a father, had failed to protect her from hardship. "Your father's rigid exterior houses a soul who has protected you across lifetimes," the woman explained. "Your mother's distance stems from a reversal of roles and unresolved pain from when you couldn't save her. You chose them both to heal these ancient patterns." Ophelia woke with tears streaming down her face, the dream so vivid that it took several minutes to reorient herself to her bedroom. The emotions lingered, not just the wonder of the experience, but a profound sense that she had glimpsed something true. That morning, she canceled her appointments and drove to her parents' home in Connecticut, something she rarely did spontaneously. When she arrived, she found her father alone in the garden, looking unusually vulnerable as he tended to his roses. "Dad," she said simply. He turned, surprised. "Ophelia, is everything all right?" Instead of the usual pleasantries, Ophelia asked, "Have you ever felt like you've known someone before this life?" She expected dismissal or discomfort. Instead, Robert's weathered face softened. "Every day since I first held you as a baby," he admitted. "There was something in your eyes, like you knew me, like we had some unfinished business." It was the beginning of a conversation that would change everything between them. The conversation with her father had opened something within Ophelia, a channel to memories or knowledge she couldn't rationally explain. Over the following weeks, her dreams continued, each more detailed than the last, revealing the intricate planning that had preceded her birth. In one particularly powerful dream, she found herself back in the blue realm, this time witnessing what appeared to be a cosmic council meeting. 7 luminous beings sat in a circle, reviewing what looked like a holographic blueprint of her life. "The Prescott family offers the perfect crucible for the lessons this soul seeks," one being stated, its voice resonating with wisdom. "The father carries the warrior energy she needs to balance her natural tendency toward intellectual isolation. The mother holds the wounded feminine she must help heal." "And what of the soul contract with Daniel?" another asked. Ophelia felt a surge of curiosity. "Daniel, She knew no one significant by that name. It remains the central relationship of this incarnation, the first being answered. Their meeting is scheduled at the critical midpoint, after she has begun to awaken, but before she fully remembers her purpose. When Ophelia woke, the name Daniel lingered in her mind. 2 days later, while attending a conference on consciousness studies in Chicago, she was introduced to Dr. Daniel Harrington, a physicist whose work on quantum consciousness had challenged mainstream science. "Strange," he said when they shook hands. "I feel like we've met before." Ophelia felt it too, an instant recognition that defied logical explanation. "Maybe we have," she replied, "just not in this lifetime." Instead of the skeptical response she halfway expected from a scientist, Daniel smiled. "You know, quantum physics is making me less certain about the nature of time and consciousness every day. Perhaps our linear understanding of life is just a convenient illusion." Over dinner that evening, they discovered numerous synchronicities in their lives. Both had nearly drowned at age 7. Both had an unexplained fascination with ancient Egypt, despite neither having studied it formally, and both felt drawn to the same obscure piece of music, Satie's Gymnopédie No. 1, which had always brought tears to their eyes without explanation. "I've been having these dreams," Ophelia confessed after their third glass of wine, "about choosing our lives before we're born, about soul contracts and cosmic planning sessions." Daniel didn't laugh. Instead, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a worn copy of Edgar Cayce's readings on reincarnation and life planning. "I've been researching this for years," he admitted. "Not publicly, it would destroy my academic credibility. But personally, I'm convinced there's something to it." That night in her hotel room, Ophelia dreamed more vividly than ever. She saw herself and Daniel in multiple lifetimes, as siblings in ancient Greece, as teacher and student in 17th century Japan, as bitter rivals in Renaissance Italy. In each scenario, their souls had pushed each other toward growth, sometimes through love, sometimes through conflict. In the morning, she knew with certainty that meeting Daniel was no accident. It had been arranged long before either of them had taken their first breath in this lifetime. When she returned to Boston, Ophelia began researching her family history, driven by an intuition that there were more connections to uncover. In the local historical society archives, she discovered that her maternal grandmother, whom she had never known, had been a devoted student of Edgar Cayce's work in the 1940s. Among her grandmother's papers was a transcript of a reading Cayce had done for her, which contained a prediction. "Your granddaughter will continue your spiritual quest, though only after she has established herself in the world of science." Ophelia sat back, stunned. She hadn't known about her grandmother's spiritual interests. Her mother had never mentioned them. Yet here was a connection that spanned generations, as if her own path had been anticipated decades before her birth. She called her mother that evening. "Mom, why didn't you ever tell me about Grandma's interest in Edgar Cayce?" A long silence followed. Then, "How did you find out about that?" "I've been doing some research." "Mom, I think there's more to our family than I've understood." Another pause. "Your father and I are coming to Boston this weekend. There are things we need to tell you, things we probably should have shared long ago." When her parents arrived, her mother brought a small wooden box Ophelia had never seen before. Inside were letters, photographs, and a journal, her grandmother's documentation of metaphysical experiences and Cayce readings. "I was afraid," Eleanor admitted. "Your grandmother's interests isolated her from her family. When I met your father and saw how practical he was, I decided to leave that part of my heritage behind. But lately what?" Ophelia prompted. "I've been having dreams about my mother," Eleanor said softly. "She keeps showing me a blueprint, saying it's time for you to see the bigger picture." Robert took Eleanor's hand. "And I've been remembering things. Another life, I think. Ancient times. You were there, Ophelia. I protected you." Ophelia felt goosebumps rise on her arms. "In Rome," she whispered. Her father's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "I think we're all starting to remember the choices we made," Ophelia said. "The agreements between our souls." Summer turned to fall, and with the changing leaves came a deepening of Ophelia's understanding. Daniel had relocated to Boston, taking a visiting professor position that conveniently placed him near Ophelia. Together, they explored the concepts that Cayce had described decades earlier, that souls travel in groups across lifetimes, that each incarnation is carefully planned for maximum growth, and that what appears as chance in human life often reflects deeply purposeful spiritual design. Ophelia organized a small gathering at her apartment. Daniel, her parents, and Dr. Eliza Morrison, a regression therapist recommended by the Edgar Cayce Center. The purpose was to explore their connections through a guided group regression. "What we're attempting is unusual," Dr. Morrison explained as they sat in a circle in Ophelia's living room. "Most regression work is done individually, but given the apparent soul connections between you all, a group experience might allow you to access shared memories from your planning session before this incarnation." The regression began with Dr. Morrison's soothing voice guiding them into a deep meditative state. Ophelia felt herself drifting through layers of consciousness, past the boundaries of her current identity, beyond the limitations of physical perception. When the transition completed, they found themselves, their conscious awareness, together in the familiar blue realm from Ophelia's dreams. But now, with everyone present, the experience took on new dimensions. "We chose this together," Robert said, his voice filled with wonder. They could communicate without speaking, thoughts flowing between them like water. In this expanded state, they perceived the grand tapestry of their interconnected lives. Not just the current one, but dozens stretching back through time and forward into possibilities not yet manifested. Eleanor gasped as she recognized her mother, Ophelia's grandmother, as one of the guiding presences in their pre-birth planning council. She was helping arrange this incarnation for all of us, Eleanor realized. Even while she was still alive, part of her higher self was preparing for what would come after. The most profound revelation came when they witnessed the moment they had each agreed to their current life circumstances. Ophelia saw herself accepting the challenge of bridging science and spirituality, of facing the initial disconnect from her parents as a catalyst for deeper seeking. Robert had chosen the military path as a way to transform his ancient warrior energy into protection and service. Eleanor had accepted the role of appearing distant to trigger Ophelia's quest for deeper connection. And Daniel, they watched as his soul enthusiastically volunteered to enter Ophelia's life precisely when her awakening had begun, to help her synthesize her scientific training with emerging spiritual awareness. "We're a soul family," Daniel said in wonder. "We've been working together for, I can't even comprehend how long." As the regression concluded and they gradually returned to normal consciousness, the room felt charged with a palpable energy. They sat in silence for several minutes, each processing the experience in their own way. "I understand now," Ophelia finally said, tears streaming down her face as she looked at her parents. "Why everything happened the way it did, why we struggled to connect. It wasn't failure or incompatibility, it was by design." Robert, a man who had rarely shown emotion throughout Ophelia's life, was openly weeping. "I always felt I was failing you somehow, that I couldn't reach you, but we planned it this way, to create the exact circumstances you needed," Eleanor added, reaching for her daughter's hand. "The exact circumstances we all needed." In the months that followed, their relationships transformed. The artificial barriers created by misunderstanding fell away, replaced by a profound appreciation for the roles they had agreed to play in each other's development. Ophelia and Daniel continued to explore their connection, which blossomed into a partnership that felt both brand new and anciently familiar. Ophelia's professional work took a new direction as well. She established a research initiative investigating the neurological correlates of past life memories and pre-birth experiences, combining rigorous scientific methodology with openness to metaphysical possibilities. The work was controversial, but groundbreaking, bridging worlds that had long been separated. On the anniversary of her first visit to the Edgar Cayce Center, Ophelia returned to Virginia Beach, this time bringing her parents and Daniel. As they walked along the shore after touring the Association for Research and Enlightenment, Ophelia found herself overwhelmed with gratitude. "We really do choose," she said softly, watching the waves. "Our parents, our challenges, our loves. Nothing is accidental," Daniel nodded. "And we choose with profound wisdom, not the limited understanding we have while incarnated, but with the full perspective of our eternal selves." Robert, who had grown more philosophical with each passing month, added, "The question is, now that we are remembering the larger design, what do we do with that knowledge?" Eleanor smiled, looking more at peace than Ophelia had ever seen her. "We live with greater purpose. We recognize that even our difficulties are meaningful, and we honor the sacred agreements we made with each other." As the sun began to set over the Atlantic, Ophelia felt a completion of the circle that had begun with her first dream. She understood now that awakening to the deeper reality of soul choices wasn't the end of a journey, but the beginning of a more conscious participation in life's unfolding design. In the end, she reflected, watching the golden light play across the faces of her beloved soul companions, we don't just choose our parents and soulmates, we choose the entire curriculum for our soul's growth. And when we remember that choice, we transform not just this lifetime, but all those to come. The four of them stood together as dusk settled over the beach, united by an understanding that transcended the boundaries of time and space. Four souls who had found each other again, just as they had planned in that realm of blue light, fulfilling promises made before any of them had drawn their first breath in this world.